how do they still exist in 2025? That's a question I hear constantly. How are these people still falling for it? How did they buy so many of these promises from Trump that ended up being demonstrable lies? We're now nearly a year into his second presidency, and he's yet to deliver on any of the prosperity that he's promised. The only thing he's delivered on is getting payback against the left. All for criticizing him? So was the whole point of electing him just to attack the left, or did they truly believe that he was going to achieve something that would make America better for them? Well, for a lot of them, I bet attacking the left and shutting them down is the better America they want, and that's the beginning and end of it. But for many Americans, they really fell for Trump's nonsense about how he was going to make the economy better. They fell for his nonsense about how he was protecting freedom of speech, how he was going to cut wasted government spending, and those tax dollars would be saved, go to programs that would help Americans, and in turn, we could lower taxes on the lower and middle earning Americans. People bought this stuff. And as crazy as it might be, they bought it twice. They bought it 2 times. When Trump won both times, they bought it. And so, looking at people who this year realized that Donald Trump was full of shit and left MAGA, after realizing that he is truly irredeemable and doesn't have a truthful bone in his body, for this to be the breaking point, you have to wonder, like, what were you saying to yourself that made you stay by him up until this point? How is this the line for you? Like, if the line wasn't miles back, how does it even exist for you? Like, why is this where it's at? And that's always what I find myself wondering too, because the line for me was way back. The line for me with Donald Trump happened in 2017. That was when Trump started doing shit that made me go, oh, I really don't like this guy, and probably never will. So for this woman to be like, yeah, it's 2025 and I figured out that Trump sucks, it's like, okay, but what did it for you? Like, at this point, what did it for you? My guess would be the Epstein files, but as I said, I've been sent a video by a channel called Life Take 2, called How I Escaped MAGA. Critical thinking woke me up. That's right, this is a How I Escaped the MAGA rabbit hole video in 2025. I am really curious about this because I want to know what takes someone who has defended Trump, or what it takes to get someone who has defended Trump all the way up to this point to finally drop him. What was the thing that sent her over the edge? Because whatever it is, we need to know. We've got to know. And so, if you want to support my video, consider leaving a like and a comment down below. It really does help a lot. If you don't know what to say, I'll give you a code word to drop down there. You know, include it in your comment if you want to let people know, or let me know that you watched this far. Peanut. Just add peanut to your comment, or just say peanut if you don't know what to say. Anyway, with all that said, let's get right into this video, shall we? How I Escaped MAGA. I'm really curious about this. I've not even seen a second of this yet.
This summer, I took a little video of myself attending a Democratic town hall. Now, this was the first Democratic event that I've ever attended in my entire life, and I just turned 51 years old a couple weeks ago. And the reason it's my first Democratic event is that I was a hardcore Republican for the first 49 years of my life. So I took this little
Good
video.
Lord.
I went to see a couple of politicians, including our local mayor and Gabby Gifford, who I've always had so much respect for, her husband Mark Kelly, and Cory Booker. And it's funny because politics is not something that I normally talk about on my channel at all. But I decided to post this video one day and talk about my journey out of Christian nationalism, white supremacy, Mormonism, and MAGA, and my visit to the Democratic town hall.
So she wasn't just a casual MAGA, she was like pretty radical. Like, she was a Mormon, like full-on white nationalist, Christian nationalist, white supremacist MAGA. Like, she was in that shit. So this is a story of full-on de-radicalization.
Thinking that not a single person in the world would care. In fact, I expected to get maybe 50 views on that video, again, because it's not my normal topic of conversation. And I didn't realize that leaving MAGA was even a thing. And then I woke up the next morning and realized that it was a thing. And you guys, I really only realized it was a thing because of the number of views. And then I went through YouTube and also Googled ex-MAGA, people leaving MAGA, and realized that that's a talking point that people actually are interested in. So here we are. So I spent the rest of the summer talking about my journey out of my huge alt-right Mormon prepper community that was full of a lot of hate and fear and just...
She grew up in a cult. That's the vibe I'm getting. Mormon prepper community. There's a good chance she grew up in like a cult community that she didn't leave for the first time till she was like 30.
Mindless obedience to the leaders, my journey out of Christian nationalism, white supremacy, and how I've come to be over here on the other side. And as I share my journey, I get a lot of questions. And obviously, the biggest question on everybody's minds is, what made me leave? How did I get to the other side? And I think one of the big reasons you guys asked me that is that you have somebody in your life that has fallen into that crowd. And you're wondering if there's hope for you. And if so, how you can encourage them to wake up and see the light. And maybe you don't have any MAGA
Yep.
people in your life, but you live in America and you're afraid of what's going on. And you're hoping that other people like me can change. So today I'm going to dive into my personal story out of MAGA and what prompted it all. I'm Jenny Gage, and this is Life Take Two. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for following along on this journey. And thank you for all of the conversations that we're
It's really interesting because the fact that someone so radicalized, who was born into the radicalism, got out and has so much self-awareness that they're making a video talking about like, hey, I got out. Let me help to inform you on how I learned that I was part of a cult, basically, and how you can maybe convince people in your life that are in this to get out as well. Mormons are 100% a cult. Well, it's sort of a mix of cults that she was within, you know, like Mormonism alone was already a hyper-conservative, like, locked up for life kind of cult. But the Christian nationalism, racism, and MAGA-ism are all kind of separate pseudo-cults that are like completely overlapping Venn diagrams with a bunch of other groups. You know, Mormons are very commonly MAGA crazies, but not all MAGA crazies are Mormons.
for having in my comments. I don't always get a chance to respond, but when I'm reading through, it's beautiful to see people thinking and people with opposing viewpoints coming together and discussing. Now, this video has no script. I don't even have my normal bullet points in front of me that I like to work off of because I just wanted to kind of organically share my story. Now, this is going to be a two-part video series. Tomorrow, I'll post a carefully researched video where I share tips to help people in your life come off of the MAGA ledge and step away from the cult just a little bit. So stay tuned for that. Today, I just want to share. And it's really important to point out right from the get-go here that I didn't just wake up one day and decide to leave the Republican Party and Donald Trump. I left everything. And it was actually stepping away from my religion and then stepping away from all religion. And
something that you got to keep in mind is that the right has not only dominated the media landscape super effectively in a way that makes it really easy to radicalize people into the right, but the right wing becomes a lifestyle. Like, I think the most significant part of right-wing radicalization aren't even the dedicated right-wing pundits, like your Charlie Kirks, for instance. It's the conservative-coded entertainment. You know what I'm talking about? Like, everything from your social groups to the creators that you watch, ranging from, like, firearms interests to podcasts to gaming to, like, the live streamers you watch. Like, there's a chance that if you're a right-winger and you're really in that shit, that, like, every one of these genres of content you have found and are dedicated to a very right-wing coded creator within that niche, maybe multiple. And so if you leave the right, so to say, like, it's not just about cutting off your intake of, like, Ben Shapiro videos or whatever. It's also, like, how many podcasts do you listen to as, like, your go-to, like, favorite, like, thing that you listen to while gaming or doing chores or doing your homework that are, like, low-key pretty right-wing in their kind of coding, their vibe, right? And you might want to consider cutting that off, too. It's like, it is a fairly large ask these days when it comes to, like, trying to get people out of this right-wing rabbit hole because it's a lifestyle. Like, being conservative is a lifestyle. Like, there's a good chance you're drinking conservative coffee if you're a right-winger. Like, it's down to, like, what brand of coffee you're drinking and what brands you refuse to stock in your fridge. You know, these people have made being conservative a ridiculously important part of who they are.
And everything that I had ever known, literally everything, we'll get into that here, that then by default, as a side effect, led me to no longer resonate with Donald Trump, with his ideologies, his policy. and with the MAGA party that had been a huge part of my life as a whole. If you haven't caught some of my other videos, I'll link a couple of them in the description. All I want to say here about my past with MAGA is that it was my entire identity, and I was deeply committed to Donald Trump and to everybody in the Republican.
I did not pre-watch. This is just, I need to emphasize I did not pre-watch, and this is not me being like based predictor of the future or anything like that. This is just basic observation of MAGA. It is their life. Like, being part of MAGA is a lifestyle. Everything from the coffee you drink in the morning to like what gaming streamers you watch to everything is all right-wing culture. All right-wing coded. I swear, you didn't catch me pre-watching. This is just a fact. She's literally giving you an insight into the life of a MAGA person. It's like they are so inundated in a nonstop influx of right-wing culture because even when they're not specifically watching Fox News or whatever their favorite right-wing pundit is, they're watching entertainment that is heavily coded with right-wing politics and validates their right-wing beliefs fairly regularly, or at least implicitly.
Republican Party, to the point that my entire social media page, my Facebook and my Instagram, in my personal life for a long time were just platforms where I could support and promote Donald Trump. I even had Donald Trump as my personal profile picture, and I was constantly writing these little love letter to Trump posts and supporting and promoting him. I was all in. How all in was I?
I feel like Facebook and posting about Donald Trump is like middle-aged white women getting to have that like phase that like usually teenage white women have, where they go on Tumblr and write like fan fiction about their favorite like character crush or whatever, you know, whatever like shit people like teenage girls or whatever on Tumblr do. But I feel like Facebook and posting about Donald Trump is like middle-aged women that weren't around for Tumblr, or well, they were, Tumblr was after their time, getting to have that like phase, getting to have that experience just a little later in life, you know? It's like, here's my headcanon love letter to Donald Trump. That's crazy. I like, she's super reasonable now and is explaining this very straightforwardly, and I know I'm kind of taking the piss out of her a little bit, and I have absolutely no hate for her. No shade is being thrown here. She's very based for the journey she's been on in making this video. But I want to have fun with it a little bit, and I'm mostly making fun of conservatives that are not out of that rabbit hole right now, not her. But yeah, it's like, it really is a lifestyle more than it is a political ideology.
I was as all in as you could possibly be, just short of actually working for Fox News. So first, a little basic background understanding into mind control, high demand religions, and organizations like the Mormon Church and the MAGA Party. Because we live in such a melting pot of different ideologies, and my neighbor across the street might be a Democrat and the other one might be a Republican and somebody else might be a libertarian, and we might have lesbians and a Catholic priest all like mixed up together. We no longer live in isolated societies where people have very similar ideologies. It's actually really easy to control people when everybody in a tribe believes all the same things. The way we do things in America, the way that we're all mixed up like that, means that rather than keeping you inside of that little isolated area, they have to keep your brain controlled. And that's what happened to me. I was born and raised into the Mormon Church. And on my mom's side, we were multi-generational Mormon. So my mom had never known anything but the Mormon Church. And her parents had joined the church quite young. And great-grandparents had joined the church relatively young. So I was born to a family that was deeply devout and really didn't have any outside views. My mom had no idea what it was like to not be a Mormon, and she had been raised very much controlled by her Mormon community. So
do you guys know how much, how often have you heard me say, like, the reason the right does this rhetoric about how insert big left-wing blue city is burned to the ground because of BLM protests, and they get away with it despite it being a blatant lie, that Portland is in fact still standing, you know, that kind of thing, is because a lot of their target audience, the millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of Americans who don't watch, who haven't been to a large American city before and have never left their hometown before, they're the ones that Fox News targets with their news. if Fox News tells them Portland is burned to the ground, then Portland might as well be burned to the ground because they've damn well never been there and never will be. And this woman is a very good example of like one of millions, tens of millions of Americans out there who live so isolated from even the rest of the country that their understanding of the world outside of their town, which many of them have never left before, if maybe a few times, like if we like there are a lot of people who've never left their hometown before in America. There are a lot more people who've only left their hometown once or twice before in America. It is these folks that Fox News are so effective at fooling, and she is one of those people, or was one of those people. If you think I'm exaggerating about that or overstating how common that is, she is one of those people who grew up isolated from the rest of like her own state, really, as part of basically a cult. And if you think this is like niche or anything, like we're talking about the Mormon state. You know, like this is not uncommon in the parts of the country that Mormons are everywhere. And even outside of Mormonism, within like all sorts of offshoots of Christianity, this is common. Florida has a significant population in the rural areas of a offshoot of Christians called quiverfuls. Do you guys know what a quiverful is? The idea is that as a man, all of your children, notably your sons, are like arrows in your quiver. Like if you're using a bow and arrow and you have your quiver of arrows, that you as a man need to have an army of sons, basically, because each son is a arrow for your bow to fire, a weapon that you can use in what they believe is an upcoming holy war that they all have the responsibility to breed an army to fight in and win. That is what quiverfuls are. They consider themselves like the fighters or generals in the war, and their offspring are the arrows in their quiver. Yeah. It's, there are a lot of different cults like this that are, like, very large and influential across America, and these are the people who vote Trump reliably.
Number one goal, and the goal of all of my youth leaders and college professors and my grandparents and my huge, big, extended family and all of my neighbors and seminary teachers and everything, was to just keep my little brain in Mormonism. And they did that fairly thoroughly. Mormonism isn't just one of these church on Sunday type of religions where then like maybe you're Catholic and you go to church on Sunday, your friends are Lutherans and atheists and whatever. As a Mormon, all of my friends were Mormons. All of my family was Mormon. I was only allowed to date Mormon. I wasn't really allowed to go to friends' birthday parties or slumber parties if they weren't Mormon. I lived in a very isolated little Mormon bubble. Mormonism is why I was Christian nationalist, by the way, because the Book of Mormon teaches that God literally made America as a promised land, and that he only brings people to America who are chosen by him, that this land is preserved for his most righteous children. And
remember, in Mormonism, Jesus, or I guess the prophet that carries through Jesus's word, is a like pilgrim, is like a European like colonist. And meanwhile, in America, and like Jesus is like a Native American or something. It's like Mormonism is like hardcore Christian nationalism, specifically designed in like the 1800s or something like that might have been the 1700s, for Americans to believe. Like America is supposed to be the Holy Land in Mormonism.
That we as members of the church were to fight to preserve this nation as not just a Christian nation, but also as a Mormon nation. So Christian nationalism was just a natural outcropping of my religion, to the point that my family and my community mixed America with the gospel. Like,
that's actually a really good way of putting it. You know how American Christians are like, they have a massive hard-on for Israel? Because I don't know how many of you guys know this, but in the Christian belief, the rapture cannot happen. That is to say, all of the saved humans on earth cannot be assumed into heaven, which is basically when you are literally lifted into heaven. Like imagine instead of dying and your soul goes there or goes to the waiting room to be accepted at a later date, I think at the rapture. Like, to be assumed into heaven is like you just float up there, like in your body, like you're just physically alive going to heaven to be immortal, which is a thing that's happened to a rare few in the Bible, but is supposed to happen to everybody who's not a sinner, who's been saved by Jesus and has heard his gospel and followed his word and whatnot by the time of the rapture. But critically, the rapture cannot happen unless Israel exists and encompasses a certain amount of the Holy Land as it historically did in the Bible. Like the God's chosen people, the Jews, have to have their kingdom back. And there are like certain parts of like Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel that are like super duper important to the Jewish religion, as well as the Christian religion, and as well as the Muslim religion. And in some of these cases, it's like the Christians are desperate for like the Jewish people to control certain regions of the Holy Land because it's part of their scripture that for certain good things in their view to happen, the Jewish kingdom of old must be rebuilt. And this is why there's such a strong support for Israel among American Christians, among many other reasons, but that's a big part of it. In that same way, Mormons are so hardcore conservative American nationalists, like Christian nationalist types, because written into their religion is that America is a special country and is the Holy Land and is special, and every Mormon needs to fight to preserve conservative ideology in said country and make it a Mormon country, make it a conservative Christian country, because this is the Holy Land in their scripture. So it's like they're as dedicated to making America a religious far-right hellhole as American Christians are to ensuring Israel controls the historical land that was once the kingdom of Israel.
Like they were both the same. I believed that the Constitution had been written by the hand of God, just like the commandments that Moses, the tablets that he had brought down from Mount Sinai. I believe that the Constitution had been scripted by God just exactly like that. And just like Moses and his people had been brought out of Egypt across the Red Sea, I believed that Christopher Columbus had been led across the ocean to the new promised land by the hand of God. My community was obsessed with Boy Scouts of America and Flag Day and the 4th of July. We always had these huge congregational pancake breakfasts on the 4th of July. And there were patriotic songs right in the hymn book, like God Bless America, like the national anthem. They are sacred songs. So all of those things were my absolute reality. Just like I knew that the sun was going to come up in the morning and the sky was blue and the grass was green, I knew that Heavenly Father had created this beautiful land of America and that Joseph Smith was true prophet and the gospel was true and the Book of Mormon was a real testament of the Indians who had lived here on the American continent. That stuff was my reality. Part of that reality was also being Republican, and that was because the Democrats tended to lean more towards women's lib, which was a sin according to Mormon doctrine, because the traditional family is the foundation of everything. So only,
and that's it right there. If you're a Mormon in America, not only do you have a religious responsibility, and you're taught this from the moment you're born, to enforce Mormon-friendly beliefs as policy standard in America, because if America strays from that policy, America becomes a less Mormon country. The literal Holy Land of your beliefs becomes less Mormon. And so, like, the concept of any sort of women's liberation or women's rights policy immediately puts the Mormons and the entire Mormon religion, period, at odds with Democrats. Like, no matter how nice your local Mormon is, keep in mind, a core part of their religion is that women are a second-class citizens, like, barely human, really. And more so than even your average Christian. Like, it is very openly part of their gospel that you must espouse and believe that women are as expressly lesser than men. And on top of that, I believe that they believe melanin in your skin is the mark of the beast. I'm pretty sure there's like a Mormon belief that black people are like Satan marked or something like that. Like it was like 10 years ago where the Mormon church started allowing black people to be part of it. It's like, it was really bad.
Satan would want women to go out and work. We believe that divorce had started
Mark
because
of
women
Cain,
started to work because the Democrats were fine with killing babies.
I could have sworn the Mark of Cain was a thing from Supernatural, but then no, turns out it's real. Turns out it's real. Well, not real, but it's a thing from the Bible. Um, yeah, it's something like that. They believe it is.
And Democrats had been the ones who had legalized gay marriage, which I believe was the greatest abomination on the face of the earth. So for those reasons, the Democratic Party to me was literally a group of Satanists. And that's what might have been my reality forever if my parents had homeschooled me, if maybe I hadn't had TV and the internet, and if I hadn't started working, see, like that's the devil, right? Women's led, but at home for a multi-level marketing essential oil company that honestly was one of the
Damn.
big kinks in my MAGA life. And if I hadn't ever been ordered to see a therapist. Again, all of these ideologies about Mormonism and America and Christian nationalism and white supremacy, they were just my reality. I was IQ tested, and 2 days a week, I was bussed out to a special school for gifted students. That was a big thing in the 80s and 90s. And this gifted class didn't just teach us memorization and stuff. I spent an entire school day, depending on the school year, between one.
I promise you, if I could bet everything that I have, I would. That if we did enough studies on it, we would find there was literally nothing more detrimental to the mental health and development of quote unquote gifted kids than to call them gifted, put them into special classes, and hold them to an even higher standard than other students. Nobody wins that arrangement, let me tell you. Definitely not the gifted kids. It's not a good system, and yeah, we've gotten better when it comes to that, but especially in the like 70s and 80s, like she mentioned when she was growing up, like if you were a gifted student, you were held to ridiculously high standards, and you were like treated so different than other kids your age. It could not have been good for development of that like whole generation of kids who got assigned into gifted programs. Like, we're talking like above like even AP, right? Like we're talking, like genuinely, like to be in a gifted program, you got to be pretty gifted at whatever particular field or multiple fields you're really good at, Don't believe it was good for those kids to be doing that. But yeah, I mean, she's going to talk about here, I think, how her life forcing her out of the bubble led to her beliefs being chipped away at. And that's fundamentally what I think we need to be doing, is doing everything we can to reach conservatives. Even if like only 5% of them change their minds when they're exposed to your ideas, that's still 5% of conservatives that you encounter whose minds you're at least kind of changing, maybe. At least setting them on the course to changing their minds, Like right now, our main issue is all these people are so deep in the conservative bubble, they can't hear us. Like we're banging on the outside of the bubble, and all they hear is like a muffled whoa, 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 whoa. We got to find a way to like reach in and make them hear. They got to come out on their own, but we got to at least find a way to get our voices in there,
1 and 2 days a week, learning critical thinking skills and problem solving on a level that I wasn't getting in my normal classroom. I was 8 years old, and I learned how to take data and analyze it and draw conclusions, how to form a hypothesis. We learned to
Important
research and
skills.
investigate and draw conclusions, even if we didn't have complete data. For example, one of my projects that year when I was 8 years old was about the Titanic, which hadn't been discovered yet. The shipwreck of the Titanic was still buried, who knows where.
Oh.
And we had to go through all of the data of the last communication from the Titanic, where it had been. And then we had to do mathematical formulations around tidal drift and things like that to speculate where the Titanic might be. And then
I want to know how accurate they were.
we had to write a newspaper report as though we had discovered the Titanic. We also had to speculate things like decomposition. Would there be any skeletal remains? Would there still be any artifacts if
there are skeletal remains?
The Titanic had struck the bottom of the sea. Could it be?
Actually, no, I don't think they are. I think all the skeletons have decomposed. I actually don't think there are any anymore. There's clothes. That's the thing. There's like boots and jackets, like leather jackets and like heavy wool jackets and stuff, and boots are still like standing up, like in the position where people were when they died on the ship. But I think the bones are all gone. So like in all the footage of the Titanic you see where they're like diving it, you don't see any of the bones, I'm pretty sure.
Buried. We had to speculate and come up with all of these things. And here's what's funny. My public school education was really at odds with my religious upbringing, because in my religion, I was learning to memorize scriptures. I was learning to memorize the things that the prophets told me. I was learning to memorize the commandments and just obey. In fact, when I was a little girl, we used to sing this song in our Mormon primary class, which is the youth ministry, that goes, "Do as I'm doing, follow, follow me." And you
Oh,
literally follow somebody in doing something. And the reason that part of the youth ministry is it's teaching you to follow the prophet. There's another youth ministry song that literally says,
be a
"Follow the
sheep.
prophet, follow the prophet, follow the prophet, he knows the way." And you march around the room as a little child as though you're following the prophet, like you're walking behind him. There's another one. "I will go, I will do the things the Lord commands. I know the Lord provides a way he wants me to obey." Obedience was honestly the only thing that I was getting out of my religious community. And it's the only thing that I would have gotten out of my religious community. And honestly, if my
Ah, man. Religion's a poison, dude. Like, I get there's some people in my community that are religious, and I'm not shit talking you, but like, nothing can ever convince me that religion itself isn't poison. Um, like, I'm not gonna lie, I get that the concept of existing is scary, that it comes with a lot of questions that you don't get a handbook on getting answered, right? Like every living thing that has the sentience to do so asks the question of why are we here? What was there before I came along? And what will there be after I'm gone? These are fundamental questions that all intelligent living things are going to ask themselves everywhere in the universe from the beginning of time until its end. And I think that's a pretty safe statement to make. And especially when it comes to the fear of death and what comes after, a lot of people literally just can't handle it. You know, for me, I've just kind of come to terms with the fact that one day I'm going to be dead, in the same way that I came to terms with the fact that there was a time where I didn't exist. I think about what was it like before I was born. Well, I don't remember anything before I was born. And I mean, like, nothing, nothing. Like, it wasn't good, it wasn't bad. And so if that's the same thing I'm going back to when I die, it's probably not going to be that bad. It's probably not going to be that bad, honestly. Like, I've been there before. I'm just going back one day. And that just doesn't seem as scary when you think about it that way, does it? And so, for me, the idea of needing to, like, have something to cope with mortality over, just not something I need. It's not something that, like, I find valuable. But I notice some people, many people, in fact, it's, like, vital to get them through life. And I really, it's really frustrating though, because it's like, I get that you need something to comfort you with, like, the most existential dread that can exist, which is the end of your consciousness. That only, like, your consciousness's only desire, its most fundamental desire, really, is to continue existing. Um, yeah, I can absolutely see why so many people, like, will flock to even the most insane cultish, like, become a sheep religions if it offers that comfort. But it's such a poison when you think about it. You know, it's the way it turns off people's critical thinking centers. And you know, just, I will never not see religion, frankly, as a way for people to comfort themselves about mortality. I will always understand it that way. And I think everything else about religion is just extra fluff thrown in there, usually by bad actors. When, like, the entire point of religion fundamentally is just to give people comfort about, like, the natural finality of their life, you know?
parents had homeschooled me, everything probably would have been fine. But again, my public school education taught me not just to obey and not just to accept the facts in front of me, but to gather data, critically think, and form hypotheses. So at age 8, I was set to be baptized into the Mormon church. And that year, we were presented in our youth ministry class with all of the details of the Mormon gospel, including Joseph Smith and the Golden Plates and the Book of Mormon and all of those little juicy nuggets of the gospel.
That particular part, by the way, they don't tell you until you're much older. The Golden Plate story, the thing that South Park parodied, is like the core of Mormonism, but it's also so ridiculous they don't even usually tell Mormons that story until they're like really old teenagers, like really bought in, like there's no getting out of it now. Like, even if you find it ridiculous, you just gotta say okay, I guess. Um, which is why when the South Park creators made that episode on the, like, Mormon religion, they're like telling that story alone was a big, like, fuck you to the Mormon religion. because that story alone is something that like Mormons don't tell each other until that like they know that that individual has reached a certain level of committed.
And I can still remember the Sunday that my teacher, Sister Say, presented to us the story of the Book of Mormon and the golden plate. And what a miracle
Yeah.
it was that God had hidden up these golden records that the Indians had written so that Joseph Smith could find them in what the early 1830s, late 1820s. And I was in this critically thinking class. So I started to critically think about it. And I raised my hand in class. I don't remember everything that I said. But I was really excited by this information. I was literally so excited thinking that Heavenly Father didn't just have the Bible, it was 2,000 years old, but that we also had this new scripture. So excited. So I raised my hand with a couple of questions. One of my questions was, where are the gold plates? Are they in a museum? Can I go see them?
Uh-oh.
And the teacher told me that an angel had taken them up to heaven so that nobody could see them. That really bothered me. That would continue to bother me.
Well, I will say, like, imagine if Joseph Smith had the forethought to say they were copper plates. Because, like, copper or iron, or even steel, especially steel, would be, like, a valuable, like, thing that it could make plenty of sense for the Word of God to be inscribed in. You know, like, the type of metal used is not that big a deal in the grand scheme of this cult scam, right? But at least if it was something like copper or iron or steel, then at least you could make that. Make a fake, make forgeries, and put it in some kind of official Mormon museum and claim it's the real metal tablets. You know what I mean? And so it's like, the fact that they're made of solid gold makes it a lot harder of a thing to fake. I'm sure at this point the Church of Mormonism could collectively like get enough gold to make fake tablets for and claim they found them, maybe like have a false like digging up of them, but they're apparently brought up to heaven as their excuse for why they can't provide slates of gold to prove this all happened. It's not exactly easy to make a series of gold tablets. And it's like 9 or 10 golden tablets, like pretty heavy, thick chunks of gold that this Word of God was supposed to be written on, right? So it's like dum dum dum. So it's like, yeah, they could have very easily faked this had Joseph Smith thought to choose a more common type of metal.
And I also
something
asked,
more affordable.
Has anyone independent of Joseph Smith discovered similar records that would support the data? And the teacher was like, I have absolutely no idea. Now, at age 8, that didn't cause me to leave the church. I would be thoroughly brainwashed and indoctrinated into the Mormon religion until I learned to gaslight myself and doubt my doubts in really significant ways. But the things I was learning along the way, how to critically think, would just degrade everything eventually. So I would eventually grow up and get married and become a Mormon trad wifey by the time I was 20 years old and just live a very Christian nationalist, white supremacist, Mormon trad wifey, alt-right prepper sort of life. Then Mormon women aren't supposed to work. Trad wives don't work, right? But multi-level marketing jobs, they're kind of okay because you can work from home. And so I started working with a friend who...
For those that don't know, maybe you're not American and this is, I think, mostly an American thing. MLM stands for multi-level marketing scheme. You might know it as pyramid scheme. They're very common for particularly like housewives to work because it's a mostly at-home job and it involves like networking through social media. Housewives and like soccer moms tend to have like a million old high school friends and stuff they're still friends with on Facebook, and they're always making friends with like other moms and stuff on Facebook, and it's seen as like they're like the ultimate MLM marketers, right? MLM salesmen, saleswomen, salespeople, whatever. Don't want to gender the term, of course. And the multi-level marketing or pyramid scheme aspect of the name comes from the fact that like Avon's a very popular one. There's another one that's really popular called what's it called? Amway. There's Amway, that's a big one. There's a million of these things. Like there's a trillion of these things. A lot of them are literally just essential oil related. But there's a million different MLMs, right? There are millions of people working for MLMs. And the idea is, so it's literally like the most scammy, shitty business practice ever. It is entirely a scam. The idea is that someone at the very top of the pyramid gets like 3 or 5 people together and says, hey, I bought this massive stock of baseball caps. Let's say just as an example. They're blank baseball caps. They aren't branded for any company or anything like that. But we want to sell them. We're gonna claim they're like extra durable, super nice baseball caps, right? And we're gonna make how blank they are part of the branding. You know? What I need you to do is I'm gonna split up all of this, all these baseball caps, into 5 parts. And each of you is gonna get 1/5 of the baseball caps, and you're gonna pay me. You're gonna pay me for the value of those baseball caps, and then you are gonna go out and you're either going to find people to sell the baseball caps to directly, or find another person or group of people, 3, 4, 5 even, that you can split your stock of baseball caps up between and give it to them and have them pay you for the stock you gave them for them to then sell at an upcharged fee. And so the theory of the pyramid scheme is that every level of the pyramid scheme going down gets to upcharge on the and get a little bit more profit, even if the item itself has changed hands through many levels of the multi-level marketing scheme before it actually gets sold to a buyer. When in reality, what all that really happens is the person at the very top of the pyramid gets the lion's share of money because they're selling an entire stock of whatever item it is they're selling, so a bunch of bottles of essential oil or whatever. And the higher up the pyramid you are, it's likely you're making a fair amount of money. But when you get lower, there's only so many people you can sell to. And then on top of that, like, no one wants to buy this shit. And if you can scam more people into selling it as well under you, not only that, you get a commission of what they sell. So the idea is that if you get someone to sell the thing, you get a commission of what they sell. If they get someone to sell something, then you get a commission of their commission, and it goes up, right? But of course, the person at the top of the pyramid is always the true winner. And, in theory, these MLM schemes are meant to be like the perfect business model, but in reality, they're a massive scam, and they always end up being a massive scam. But unfortunately, there are many trad wife, MAGA soccer moms out there working in MLM schemes selling essential oils.
Had joined this essential oil multi-level marketing company, and I was selling oils everywhere I could. I was doing classes at my home, and some of my friends and neighbors would invite other friends and neighbors to my classes. This broadened my community and my network outside of just my Mormon ward. I started meeting people in my own neighborhood that I had never met before, and people outside of my neighborhood. And suddenly I started having this whole slew of lesbians who signed up for my MLM. I know a lot of people think that my old life fell apart because of my ex-husband, Jake, but that's actually not why. He had no part. None of that had anything to do with me leaving. It was actually my lesbian friends. doTERRA team, like, there they were, and they became personal friends of mine. And for the first time, I saw into the lives and behaviors of the boogeymen, and they were amazing. And then my brain started comparing and doing some critical thinking, and I realized all these lesbians and my essential oil company downline are way nicer and have far better, happier lives than the people that go to church with me on Sunday, people in my family.
The right will tell you if you're one of them, the left are miserable and they hate their lives. That freedom sounds good, but living a free life is, you actually want discipline and strict rules, because once you actually have freedom, it makes you miserable. This is a very common argument with conservatives, or was for a while. Less so today, because they're trying to pull the whole we're pro-freedom thing. But for a long time, their argument was women are truly happiest when their freedom is limited. That women who are like, they have jobs and incomes and they aren't tied down by marriage or kids, are actually more miserable than women with no rights and no autonomy who are, married out at like 17, barefoot, pregnant in the kitchen, living to please their husband. Apparently that is the state in which women are most happy. They just think they'll be happier being free. This is a very common instilled idea among conservatives.
Other people in my community. That realization, I will tell you, put my brain into so many mental gymnastics. that I could not possibly control. Then we got the computer in our home, and I had never really had a computer before. And I was
Ooh,
really
the
late to
internet.
getting like a smartphone, and I got on Facebook, and that allowed me to see a peek across the world. And what I realized is that some of the hatred and bigotry that was coming from my community towards other people was completely unwarranted. Literally, access to just seeing the world through social media and through the internet, it kind of proved to me that my religious leaders and people in my political party were just liars. But I found ways to quell those scares and keep believing the church and stay part of the community. And I just chalked all of those doubts up to Satan anyway, so I didn't really care much about them, but those little seeds had been.
What's the recurring theme here is sometimes we are making progress with these people, even when it really doesn't feel like it. Like, sometimes they're just so deep down the hole that you're gonna have to keep, like, pulling on that rope for a while and see no progress being made before they start to finally emerge out of the shadows of that hole, and you start to see them slowly rising with every pull. Like, it really does seem like, with no real noticeable changes in her beliefs, there were several events that shook her beliefs that led up to the same similar situation what happened to me in my Chud era, where, like, several occurrences happened where my beliefs were shaken, but it didn't immediately mean I was, like, less conservative after that. It just meant, well, maybe that's just a one-off thing. And after a certain amount of, like, chalking it up to just being a fluke or a one-off thing, or, you know, just that one creator is a bad apple among the right, eventually it piled up to be this, like, overwhelming wall of reasons not to be an uncritical, sycophantic right-wing teenager. And once that wall got big enough, I had to consider whether or not my beliefs were truly defensible. And sure enough, I found that they weren't, and I changed them.
Planted. And then my abusive marriage got so bad that I was
Oh boy.
ordered to see a
Yeah.
therapist. Now, this was something that I had never done before. I believed that the gospel and the scriptures and Heavenly Father, my priesthood leaders, and just my personal prayers had the answers to everything. Jesus was my healer. I didn't need some shrink getting in my head and teaching me weird thoughts that were of the devil, but I was ordered. I had to. So I went and saw a therapist, and that therapist would be one of the big straws that broke the camel's back. Let me tell you specifically how that happened.
God, could you imagine if a bunch of these conservatives all got therapy? God, who'd have thought? One therapy session is enough to seriously shake the conservative worldview of a lot of these people.
He taught me how to listen to myself. My therapist didn't ever tell me, like, leave your husband or, like, maybe don't go to your church because it seems like it's harming your life. He just made me look inside for the first time, and he taught me that you're not supposed to feel crappy all the time. That's not Satan testing you. That just means that you have a crappy life. He taught me it's okay to feel happy. In fact, you should feel happy. So he kind of taught me internalized critical thinking, that if something's going on in your life and you're not feeling good, look around and see if you can figure out why your life is so unhappy. Let me give you one example of that. Mormons are obsessed with family dinners. Like, the family that eats together stays together, and family dinner for us was a big deal because I was a crab wife, so we had all this homemade food. We'd often have our family prayer and scripture study as part of dinner. We wanted everyone together all the time, unless they had sports or a job or something. Our whole entire family sat down for this big family meal every single night for decades. I was the cook, I was the cleanup crew, I was everything. I really had this religious belief in family dinners. It's a big deal. One day, my therapist just throws out to me, he says, it seems like we have a lot of conversations around dinner, you being abused during dinner or immediately after dinner by Jake, and you exhibiting a lot of stress around mealtime. Yeah, I'm cooking all this homemade food. We have a bunch of kids, and it's like a bad time of day where everybody's just coming home from school and they have homework, and we're transporting to sports practices right after and things like that. And also, I was married to a dick. So mealtime wasn't particularly enjoyable. Nothing was enjoyable. The only enjoyable thing was just not being around him. Of note, I still have so much trauma around mealtime that my therapist has had to work through that PTSD. And it's only been about a year that I've been able to sit down face to face with my own partner and my teenagers, and especially other strangers at dinner time, either in my own home or at a restaurant, without having PTSD panic attacks that can potentially end me up in an ambulance and in the hospital. Because
PTSD is no joke, dude.
the abuse that I suffered at mealtime. My family mealtimes growing up were horrible too. And so dinner's not a happy place for me to be. And my therapist just pointed that out one day. And he said, maybe there's another solution to that. Why don't you experiment and see if there's another way to eat meals that makes you a little bit happier? He challenged me to find myself a TV tray. I actually stopped at a garage sale on the way home from therapy that day. They had a 50-cent TV tray that I still have in my dresser that we are going to literally use in my movie. This exact TV tray will be in my movie. I dug it out.
Oh.
This TV tray changed my... So that night, I bought myself a lobster tail, like a little side salad. And instead of cooking and eating dinner as a whole family, I had gotten the kids in TV dinner. And I sat down at my TV tray in front of my favorite show. And I told everyone, hey, don't bother mommy. You guys do your thing. I'm going to do my thing. And it was the first meal in decades that I had eaten that I was actually happy. And I started to learn to look inward and see what made me happy. Therapy did that. Therapy.
Dude, imagine if just MAGA got therapy. Maybe that could be a good title for this video. MAGA needs therapy. Then again, I don't know if that video title would pop off that well, but it's totally true. It's really wild how the moral of this story ended up being she got therapy and her right-wing beliefs kind of faded away from there. Not only that, but it's how she realized it was time for her to get out of her shitty Mormon, slavery marriage. Be very clear, Mormons treat women like slaves. Like, their wives are their slaves. They are their property. So yeah, it's not a good situation. It's worse than your average, evangelical situation. Like your average Christian evangelicals. The Mormons are super radical about it. Like, there's Sharia law about it. There's a reason why a lot of conservatives are very against it. Therapy, that is. There is a very good reason why. I think we just found out why. Anyway, folks, if you liked that video and this one, be sure to leave a like and a comment on my video and click the link down below in the description when this goes out on YouTube to go leave some support on the original video. And of course, if you guys want to see more from me in the future, follow my social medias linked down below in the description, subscribe and ring the bell icon, join my Discord server, and if you want to support me directly, financially, help me keep the lights on and a roof above my head here at the Xanderhall studio, then please consider donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or support me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, StreamElements, Patreon, or buy some custom Xanderhall merch through the Streamlabs link down below. Regardless of how you support me though, thank you all so much for watching, and as always, have a good one.